Hello everyone, my name's Max Sweiry, I'm CTO at AI-mation. It's a pleasure to join you all today. First off, I want to say thank you to the Innlandet County Municipality, the Mjøsvasen Foundation, I hope I've said that correctly, and UNESCO Creative Cities of Media Arts for having me as a guest speaker. And of course, a big hello to everyone in attendance, students, educators, musicians, sound designers. I have been asked to speak to you today about music and sound in the age of AI. It's a really interesting topic and we've got a lot to cover. So before we get into it, I'll give you a brief bit of background about myself and my work in the music industry. So in a traditional sense within the music industry, I've been a composer, music producer and a vocalist. I'm also a classically trained cellist. Although it's been a few years since I played regularly, it's something I haven't completely forgotten, as I started playing cello when I was 6 years old and my mum was a piano teacher, so I've always had music around me growing up. I spent 10 to 15 years as a recording artist, traveling and performing as a vocalist in the drum and bass industry. But I decided to put my musical background into something I had a huge passion for, which is composing music for films. So over the years, I've been lucky enough to score 10 films, working mainly with close friend, director and producer Tom Payton, who is the CEO at AI-mation. And the latest publicly released project we worked on together, and the main reason I'm speaking with you today, is the film Where the Robots Grow. We'll get into that film shortly, but first let's discuss some of the traditional issues with creating sound and music for films. AI technology is completely changing the way that we create sound and music for films. I don't know how many people listening to or watching this have ever written a full film score, but traditionally it can be slow. It can be often very frustrating. In an ideal world, you're probably given something like 6 months or even longer if you're asked to compose a score from scratch, to write it, produce it, mix it, and have it ready to go directly onto the film. That may or may not include approvals, revisions as required by directors and producers, because everyone wants to have their say. Now, me personally, I think once in 10 movies have I ever been given more than 6 weeks to write a full score. That's simply down to time restraints, factors, and other departments having to get their revisions and changes in order before it comes over to us on the sound and music front. In fact, the last few films I did traditionally, I think I ended up with 4 to 6 weeks to complete the score from start to finish. And I ended up doing 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, sometimes 7 days a week. As you can imagine, it was straining to the absolute limit to get it done in time and to hand in work that I could actually be proud of and say that it worked perfectly on the film. If you haven't done that before, I can tell you now it's a very stressful process. And there are things that happen within our department that make it pretty stressful and potentially very expensive to complete sound and music for a film. On the sound side of things, take something like ADR, additional dialogue recording, which is done in a studio after the film is edited, and it's used to record lines that maybe weren't recorded well on set or needed a line change or adjusting. It's costly, ADR. Just imagine if you need to change like 1 or 2 lines of dialogue after your film's wrapped. You don't have the actors anymore on set. It means booking an expensive studio session, potentially waiting weeks for the actors to be available, dealing with everyone's schedules. It can be frustrating. It can slow down creativity. I can think of many more examples where the traditional workflow in sound and music departments for film can be quite straining on the overall process on the road to completion. It's just within music itself, you got to have a certain quality of plugins and instruments within your system, within your digital audio workspace, in order to make sure that a score can be up to scratch. And that in itself can be very expensive, as I full well know as somebody who's been doing this for a while. So how do we see AI giving us a small advantage and taking away some of the strain of these traditional issues that we find? Well, let's start with one of the examples I gave you, ADR. We can talk about dialogue recordings and dialogue used within films. AI is changing the process entirely for something like ADR. And honestly, it's changing the process of generally putting dialogue into your movie. We used 11 Labs extensively in Where the Robots Grow, and we continue to use it extensively at AI-mation. Some of you may have heard of it, some may not. For those who aren't aware, it's an incredible tool. It allows us to clone voices and even dub languages using the original actor's voice. So imagine your favorite Spanish TV show or even something as big as The Simpsons. It's instantly dubbed into Norwegian language with the same actors, the original actors' voices. And we won't speak about this today, but due to other advances in AI, you can even get a perfect lip sync with those translated vocals. So it's pretty revolutionary. For Where the Robots Grow, we only had 2 voiceover actors, and with each actor, they voiced multiple characters. And we did that by using 11 Labs to paint new voices onto their original recordings. So Taylor, one of our voice actors, he called it vocap, which would stand for voice capture. Just kind of like mocap for motion capture. In that sense, you take an actor's movements, paint them over a character on screen, and in this vocal realm, it's exactly the same thing, just with voices. It's simplified our workflow dramatically, and the ease of it's really quite remarkable. So I'll try and do an example. I can take my voice now, this recording, and simply
change it to a different character speaking
by using the 11 Labs voice changer tool. It's simple, it's effective.
It's really impressive. Not only that,
but as I said, you can change language and keep the original actor's voice.
Aber wie ich sagte, Sie können die Sprache ändern und die Originalstimme des Schauspielers behalten.
So as you can see, there are some incredible tools out there that can help with sound and dialogue specifically in movies and media. If you haven't been on 11 Labs, it's definitely worth checking out. It's not so expensive either, especially when you can compare it to something like a studio session that you would book for an actor. In this realm, you can, with the permission of an actor, take their voice, a 2-minute sample. You can clone their voice within 11 Labs for your specified project, and you can use whatever dialogue you need to from that cloned recording. It saves time, it saves money. It's really quite a remarkable tool. Now, I imagine there's quite a few people tuned into this who would like to discuss music in AI, and film scoring is something I'm very passionate about. I wanted to be a film composer for many years, and I was lucky enough to get that opportunity, as you can imagine, firstly on a super low budget film, as most of us would start out with. And then over the years, managing to do some bigger projects as my experience was building up. So when we here at AI-mation created Where the Robots Grow, we were experimenting with various music generation tools. And we found that a tool called Udio was the most effective software for helping to develop and create a film score. If you don't know it, that's udio.com, Udio. And it's definitely worth checking out, I can tell you now. The tools that are available, or the tools that were available when we made Where the Robots Grow, because that was halfway through 2024, those tools then were quite impressive, and Udio was impressive, but since then they've advanced even more. So I suppose I'll take you through what the process was then, and then I can give you some information on what the advances have been since then as well. So previously, UDO allowed you to either write in a prompt that would generate a piece of music from that prompt, or you were able to upload a short clip of your own composition and it would build on that composition and expand on it while still maintaining the main theme and the feeling of your original composition, which of course helped a lot when it came to scoring the movie. Now you're actually able to do even more than that. You can upload a song and UDO will generate songs in the same style as that song, and it's really very accurate. I wish I could sit for another 30 minutes with you guys and show you tons of examples of this, but the best thing you can do is jump on it yourself and try it out and get creative with it. Use UDO, use all the tools it has. There's stuff like in painting where you can change specific sections of pieces. You can, which seems like a relatively easy thing to do now, and it's sort of, I take it for granted, but you can make introductions and outros for every piece that you generate. But that in itself was pretty remarkable because UDO will recognize what would be a good introduction for your piece and what would be a good outro. The technology is really quite something, and UDO itself is a very impressive piece of software. I did touch earlier on some of the traditional timelines for movie scoring, working 12 hours a day sometimes to get a film score completed on time. As you can imagine, with the help of AI, we completed the entire score for Where the Robots Grow in about 4 weeks, with all the changes and the adjustments that were needed. The difference being I was working normal office hours and I even had weekends off, which felt like quite a treat considering how it's a traditional world of independent filmmaking. And I even had my weekends off, which felt like quite a treat considering how it is in the traditional world of independent filmmaking. I would also argue that the score for Where the Robots Grow, in comparison to my previous scores, which were written traditionally from scratch, is of an improved quality with better mixes and, I will say, with better creativity. I'll explain in a little more detail. So, UDO's process is intuitive. You can prompt music styles, or even better, you can upload a short theme that you yourself have composed, and the AI quickly expands and orchestrates it. So it allows me as a composer on the creative side, rather than getting lost in endless mix downs or technical production details, like spending hours on EQing a snare drum, which anyone within the electronic music industry will know is common practice. It allows us to solely focus on the composition elements. Now, I still want to hit the keys on the piano, play around with themes. That's all part of my process, and AI won't change that. It gives me creative control, helps the creative juices to flow. That part of the human interaction in terms of scoring a film is always going to be necessary. Now, AI mixes aren't always perfect immediately. They can require human editing, rearranging, some creative judgment is needed. But what AI does brilliantly is it does help us as composers to experiment outside of our comfort zone. For example, I naturally prefer to compose minor key themes, but UDO helps me to create brighter, happier melodies. It's just the way my brain is wired. I write sadder, more minor themes more easily. But without UDO, it's a bit of a struggle. The way my brain is wired, I just happen to write sadder, more minor themes more easily. And without UDO, it's a bit of a struggle to make advances on the happier sounding themes. But now it's not only possible, it's actually relatively easy to do. And it takes me personally into a completely different creative zone. I'm composing music that I never would have before. And that might be through making 20 seconds of a happier theme. And if my brain is struggling to comprehend how to continue that, well, I feed Udio the first 20 or 30 seconds of my happier theme that I've managed to create. And then Udio takes it in a direction while still keeping the integrity of my original theme as the main staple of the piece. Now, there are also practical advantages as well. For example, using AI-generated audio stems instead of heavy MIDI arrangements reduces the CPU load significantly. I've personally worn out several computers using MIDI-heavy films, and not everyone has the budget for a full orchestral recording, but AI allows for very affordable and quickly created realistic orchestral scores. Importantly, if AI produces a brilliant composition, nothing stops us from later recording it traditionally with real musicians. It's all about integrating AI with human creativity and not replacing it. If you listen to the Where the Robots Grow soundtrack, it'll demonstrate the creative partnership, delivering music with what I would like to say is soul. So my own themes are in places things that I personally compose and have been expanded on by Udio, as I've explained. So in short, I don't feel like AI tools such as Udio threaten composers. I actually believe they enhance our capabilities. They allow us to produce better, faster, and more creative work than we've done before. And I think most importantly, being someone who's actually a composer in this realm who uses AI regularly, you'll often hear composers who reject AI and don't want to use it continually saying that it's starving people of creativity. But as someone who's actually using it, who is a traditional composer, I can say the complete opposite is true. Now, I'm going to move slightly back into the sound realm and talk about some sound effects and audio cleanup tools within sound production. These are also vital elements for film and sound production within film. So regarding sound effects, 11 Labs has actually recently expanded into creating sound effects. It's a big step forward for them and a big step forward for us as sound designers. It's basically simplified the sound design process even further. Another thing that I can say as far as those who claim that AI shouldn't be used within sound production is that AI has been part of audio plugins for years. Companies like Isotope, they have AI-driven mixing and mastering tools always within them, and they've had them there for years. If I had to give you any pointer for a plugin that I would personally download, super simple to use and very cost effective, because I think it's only $70 or so. It's a plugin called Supertone Clear, and it cleans audio recordings really well. For those in the back, that is called Supertone Clear. I would absolutely get this plugin if you need something to clean background noise and reverbs out of recordings. It does an incredible job considering what it is. I'm certainly one of those people that over the years, I've not only composed music for films, but I've also done sound cleanup, sound editing, sound design for films. And I spent thousands of pounds on tools like RX. And I'm not saying RX is not a great tool. It is a great tool, and it certainly gives you more intricate capabilities over sound cleanup. But something like Supertone Clear is so cost effective, so simple to use. It's such a time saver that you may as well save things like RX for the most difficult jobs that you have. Supertone Clear can be used on the vast majority of audio recordings just for cleanup. Of course, there's only so much that you can save in terms of a really badly recorded piece of audio. But I have to say, Supertone Clear has been very impressive. And in my opinion, it's an essential tool at this point in terms of what I use to clean up sound for films. I'm going to show you Supertone Clear right now. Hopefully you're listening on speakers where you can hear a difference, because as I'm sure many of you know, the differences within sound cleanup can be subtle, but they're certainly there. So if I turn back up my ambience and my reverb on this current recording, you can hear that there's plenty of noise in the background. The recording's not as good. If I turn them down again, completely to zero, for example, to go to the extreme, you can hear how it's cleaned up everything in the background. And as I said, I'm somebody who used to buy super expensive plugins because I knew they were industry standard. I suppose what I'm saying is that the industry standard is going to very quickly change, and it's changing now. So it's very much worth looking into these kind of tools. There are others that I can mention, but Supertone Clear, it's cheap, it's effective, and for me personally, it's an essential part of my arsenal at this point. Now, there are a lot of questions that people have over human and AI integration, the working together of humans and AI. And I thought I'd briefly touch on why human expertise still matters when it comes to creating sound and music for films. AI is a partner. It's not a replacement. It's not here to replace composers or producers. It really is enhancing what we do. I think human editing, arranging, mixing, and musical instincts are still always going to remain essential to the process. A lot of people that don't work with AI are under the impression that it produces a perfect song instantly. But if you're doing that for a specific scene of a film, I'd say it's rarely the case that it comes out perfect the first time. Tracks will need stitching, they need editing, they need refinement. These are skills that only an experienced producer or composer would have. So I would say, given what AI offers, it actually allows me to be more productive, less stressed about the technical details, and therefore more creative overall. Anyone that's concerned that AI-generated music lacks soul, I suppose we'd say the proof is in the pudding. And I'd invite you to listen to the soundtrack for Where the Robots Grow, even just the opening music. Judge for yourself if it lacks soul, because I find that it's pretty emotional, it feels authentic, and that's precisely because it began with a human at the heart of the creative process, guiding the AI system. And I would say that the musical themes really reflect that. It's actually not something as forgive me for using the word robotic, but the score is not robotic in the same sense that you would find a reel on social media, a video on social media, where you can tell that the music lacks soul. It might have been generated by AI, but it's just been slapped onto a reel on a social media platform. Whereas here, because there is a composer at the heart of what's going on screen, in terms of the score and trying to curate the score for what's going on screen, you can tell that there is soul there. And it's certainly not a soulless score, in my opinion. Now, adapting to AI in the industry is a very important thing right now. And when it comes to the film industry, film productions, especially in the UK, to my knowledge, are down quite dramatically. There's less films being made than ever. So it's clear that adaptation is needed and it's essential. And AI is providing the opportunity for films that may not have gotten off the ground to actually be produced. And I think it's important for those within the industry to adapt to the new technology and to the advances that are happening. For example, the ADR studios I mentioned earlier, those ADR recording artists, with the help of something like 11 Labs, instead of booking out their studio for a whole day for one film, potentially having an actor turn up late and only needing a couple of hours of the session or whatever it might be, there are many problems that can occur. They can instead offer multiple sessions daily and record multiple films daily. The orchestral musicians, who some people will say are having their jobs taken away, well, they can independently create a whole album now themselves. Filmmakers can become what we at AI-mation call omnigen directors. They're creators who can make an entire film themselves in just weeks or months instead of it taking years and potentially millions of dollars to produce. Speaking of omnigen directors, that's something that's currently unique to us at AI-mation. And if you want to know more about that, just jump onto www.aimation.world. You can throw your email into the waitlist and we can invite you into the app, which is currently on the iOS store. The app is filled with film content that we have created. And I think you'd be really surprised with how far this has come, because a lot of people are saying that AI is coming, but the truth is that it's already here. And a company like ours are able to prove that you can create an entire movie using AI now. It's no longer just tiny 30-second videos. This is full-length feature film type content. And if anyone out there is interested in potentially making this kind of content, just give us a shout, because we think this is the next stage of creation within the film industry. You're no longer going to have a crew of 200 or 300 people making one movie. Instead, you're potentially going to get 200 or 300 movies out of that crew, because each one of those people could make their own production. So it's a pretty exciting world at the moment as far as AI in the film industry in general. And of course, I was only supposed to be talking to you about sound and music, but such is the advances within AI, it's pretty clear that somebody who's a composer or a sound designer nowadays could actually become the full film production omnigen director, the person who does the visuals, who does all the lip sync, who does all of the sound, who does all of the music, who creates the entire production from start to finish. That is what we do at AI-mation. So as I said, if you want to know more, you can go to www.aimation.world. There are a whole bunch of projects on that platform, which we would love for you to check out. So at this point, I'm probably coming towards the end of my talk. So I'll try to summarize briefly. I do hate to sound generic, but this is pretty much a creative revolution. AI technology democratizes film and music production. It empowers anyone with ideas and passion. It makes a music composer more creative. It makes a sound designer more efficient. And it's funny how people who don't use AI, they claim that those who do use it are lazy. But I can tell you the reality is that you have to be the least lazy person in the room to make the most out of the AI tools that are available to you. If you're lazy, you'll do the bare minimum with them. If you're productive and driven and keen to explore them more, you're going to make something pretty special. So we should all be ready for the change, because it might seem a little daunting, but to embrace this kind of technology, it'll open doors that we couldn't have previously imagined. So to sign off my message to everyone today is to be creative. Be excited about using AI technology in your work. It's offering opportunities within our industry that just weren't possible before. The tools are here. They're available right now, so don't wait. As I mentioned before, you can see more from AI-mation if you add your email to our waitlist at www.aimation.world. If you get into the app, you can see what AI tools are really doing within the film industry now. It'll only speed up in terms of progress, so now's the time to get involved. Thanks for having me. I hope this has been helpful for everyone. And if you have any questions, feel free to send me a message via socials, my website, or through AI-mation directly. Thank you again, and good luck to everyone out there in the creative realm. Cheers.